Hey guys, what's up and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the importance of re-rolls in 40k. So re-rolls improve the efficiency of your army in Warhammer 40k, and this can be both in your turn and your opponent's turn and in various phases of said turns. So the most common form of re-rolls is when resolving attacks, and this can be either in the shooting phase, the combat phase, or the Overwatch section of the charge phase, which would then mean that you'd get the benefit of re-rolls in your opponent's turn. So the most common examples of characters that give the benefit of re-rolls are things such as Space Marine Captains, Chaos Lords and Demon Princes, but re-roll benefits aren't just limited to models or characters, and some chapter traits actually give you the benefit of re-rolling ones to shoot, etc. So the common examples of that are the Acadian Regiment of the Imperial Guard, where if you stand still you can re-roll ones, and also Bad Moons, but then you don't need to stand still to get the benefit of re-roll ones. With Bad Moons you can move and still re-roll ones. So there are nuances between different factions. So those are examples on how you can re-roll ones when rolling to hit, but also when resolving attacks you also need to roll a wound roll. So things like Space Marine Lieutenants can also mean that when you're resolving an attack you can re-roll your ones from a captain, and then you can re-roll ones to wound from your lieutenant. So really, to really improve the efficiency of your army, you'd look for overlapping these re-roll auras, and usually they are like 6 inches. So similarly to re-rolling ones to hit, there's also chapter traits that can benefit re-rolling ones to wound. So a key example of this is the Deathguard. So the Deathguard get their own unique type of weapons in comparison to other chapters and factions. So the Deathguard gets something called a plague weapon. So a plague weapon means that you can reroll ones to wound when using a weapon that has the plague keyword. So there's an example in such like the Acadian in comparison with the Space Marine Captains. The Deathguard get that reroll compared to having to pay for a unit such as the Space Marine Lieutenant. Okay, so even on top of just re-rolling ones, there is a way to improve the efficiency of just re-rolling ones. So, Space Marines have access to a stratagem that can upgrade your regular Space Marine Captain to a Chapter Master. Now, this is different to the Deathwatch Watchmaster that is available to them as just a points cost. So, the Chapter Master of the Space Marines, you pay a command point cost and you can re-roll all hit rolls. So this is important. In comparison to the Deathwatch Watchmaster, that you can only re-roll all failed hit rolls. So if you've got a 3-up ballistic skill, and then you are applying a -1 modifier from something like a Flyer or Aldar Shenanigans, then when you're re-rolling with the Space Marines, because it says all hit rolls, you can re-rolls 1, 2 and 3s. However, if you're using Deathwatch and a Watchmaster, because it says all failed hit rolls, if you roll 3s to hit, they're technically successful before modifiers. So you can only re-roll 1s and 2s, then the 3s become a miss. So this is something you need to take into consideration when constructing your army, and the benefits that you'll receive, and then obviously playing, because you don't want to get that wrong, because then that can either, if you're using a Space Marine Chapter Master and you don't re-roll enough, you're doing yourself out of shots. But then also if you roll too much from using the Watchmaster because you think it's like a Chapter Master, you're then cheating. Also, re-rolling all failed whatever isn't also just limited to the hit rolls. So Deathguard have a Warlord trait called Arch Contaminator. So Arch Contaminator works in the same way a Watchmaster does for shooting for wound rolls of plague weapons. So the Arch Contaminator Warlord trait means that you can re-roll all failed wound rolls with a plague weapon in a certain radius. I think it's 6 inches. So that works in the same way as a Watchmaster. So if they've got a modifier to wound, such as the Harlequin Shadowseer providing that benefit, then you'll say you're wounding on 4s normally, then the modifier is -1. You'll be re-rolling 1s, 2s and 3s, but not 4s, because that's technically a successful wound before modifiers. Okay, so as stated previously, the re-roll mechanism isn't limited to just resolving attacks. So orcs have a handy trick in that they can re-roll one or both of the charge dice when resolving a charge move. So this is important, because if you roll a 6 on one and a 1 on another, you can just roll the 1 and get your extra inches. However, this is different to some other re-roll charge mechanisms where you have to re-roll both. So when looking for your rerolls, it is important to look at such of the wording of the rule, such as the example that I've just provided with the orcs, which is slightly different to other reroll charge mechanisms, which can be greatly beneficial, because if you roll a 6 and a 1, say, on another charge roll, you'd have to roll both, and then you'd risk getting less. Whereas the benefit of just rerolling 1 is you get to keep the 6. You got a minimum 6-inch charge move already. You can also reroll dice during the morale phase when determining the result of a leadership check. This generally doesn't come into play too much with 40k at the moment in the 8th edition, but Space Marines have the rule They Shall Know No Fear, which means they can reroll the dice when determining the leadership check, which can be beneficial in obviously keeping your models on the board and not running away because they're scared. But as I said, that doesn't really come into play too much. So hopefully me talking about these different ways you can reroll dice has shown that rerolls are important in increasing the efficiency of your army in various phases of the turn. So whether that be by generating extra hit rolls, wound rolls, or just extra charge dice, each of those rerolls will lead to obviously killing more models and units within the game and make your life easier on the tabletop, or leadership in keeping your models on the tabletop, which can then obviously go on to do different actions, take objectives, and kill other units, obviously. Okay, so I'd just like to go through a few examples of the armies that I use and their access to rerolls that I actually exploit during the game, and hopefully that'll give you some inspiration to mix up your armies or give you different thoughts of how to set up your army and to improve your efficiency on the tabletop. So my main competitive army is the Imperial Guard. So I run my Imperial Guard as Cadians, so they get reroll 1s to shoot when standing still, and also I use the Relic of Lost Cadia. So this is a one-time use relic that when you pop it at the start of the shooting phase, you can reroll 1s to hit and also 1s to wound, unless your opponent has the keyword Chaos, and then you can reroll all failed hits and wounds, which is excellent. But this is only for one turn only. Also, this allows you to move, so if you need to move in the turn that you use the Relic of Lost Cadia, you can then reapply the benefit of rerolling 1s, even if you move and negate the Cadian benefit. In addition to this, I use the Warlord trait Old Grudges on one of my company commanders. So Old Grudges means that you can select one unit in your opponent's army, and every unit within 6 inches of that particular model, in my case a company commander, can reroll all failed wound rolls against that target. So that can be pretty effective at getting rid of super heavy models such as Imperial Knights, but also like one pesky tank, say it's a repulsor in a Space Marine list or something. So it's generally a very useful way of getting rid of kind of a figurehead of an opponent's army. In addition to these rerolls when using Imperial Guard, I also use the Imperial Guard Order Take Aim. So what this does when you are Cadians, if you stand still, such as with a heavy weapons team such as mortars, you get the reroll 1s from being Cadian, but if you stack the Take Aim Imperial Guard Order on top of this, it means that you can reroll all failed hit rolls for that particular unit. So it can be pretty efficient when using mortar teams that are hitting on 4s and rerolling 1s if they're stood still, but then they're rolling 1s, 2s and 3s when you stack the Take Aim Order on them. So this can be pretty useful at getting rid of low toughness hordes like Termagants, etc. Okay, so the second army that I use when playing 40k is Deathwatch. So I have 2 Watchmasters in my list, which give the benefit of rerolling all failed hit rolls. So that is very useful at castling up with repulsors, dreadnoughts and Vanguard veteran teams or intercessor kill teams. But I've also got the reroll 1s to wound against a specific unit type with their own inbuilt chapter tactics, which can also be changed for a Warlord trait midway through the game. So if your target priority changes, you can also change your reroll 1s to wound, which is really useful. And also whenever I'm using the Corvus Blackstar, because it's an awesome model but not quite good enough to be competitive at the moment, unfortunately, it has an inbuilt war gear, I guess it would be called, that you can take. That means that it can reroll 1s to hit by paying like 10 points or something, I think it is. Last but not least is the Deathguard. So I use them casually at the moment, so I'm hoping they get a good improvement with the Psychic Awakening, which I'm eagerly awaiting at the moment. But Deathguard get access to rerolls in the Lord of Contagion. So the Lord of Contagion is different to a Space Marine Captain or a Chaos Lord, because it means you get the benefit of rerolls in the fight phase. So you can reroll 1s in the fight phase, whereas reroll all hit rolls, or reroll hit rolls of 1, is both the shooting and combat phase. So this means that you can only get the reroll ones in the fight phase, which is kind of not great. In my Deathguard list, I also use a Demon Prince, which is the equivalent of a Chaos Sword and Space Marine Captain. So that says in its data sheet to just reroll ones to hit. So that means both the fight phase and the combat phase. And I usually use that in a kind of death ball. And then, as previously mentioned, Deathguard have the access to the Plague weapons, rerolling ones to wound, and also Arch Contaminator, which means you can reroll all failed wound rolls with Plague weapons. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, comment and subscribe.